Israeli occupation military faces a new disaster amid fierce fighting in eastern Gaza City. The Syrian Defense Ministry reports casualties among its forces while trying to protect civilians in El Suwaida villages. And the U.S. Special Envoy Kellogg arrives in Kiev following announcement of the new air defense system shipments to Ukraine. Israeli media report that the Israeli occupation military faces a new disaster amid fierce fighting in eastern Gaza City. A severe security incident resulted in multiple casualties, including 2 soldiers killed by an anti-tank missile and dozens wounded. Israeli occupation forces intensified artillery shelling and deployed smoke bombs in neighborhoods like El Tufafah and Jabalia to secure an aerial evacuation by helicopters. Following the evacuation, Israeli gunships attacked civilian homes in eastern Jabalia, causing widespread panic among residents. Several injured soldiers were transferred to Tel Hashomer Military Hospital in Israel. Israeli media has reported that the Israeli occupation army activated the secret Hannibal protocol during clashes east of Gaza after Palestinian factions attempted to capture a soldier who was later found dead. This protocol permits the army to strike locations of captured soldiers, even at the risk of killing them, to prevent their capture. The army evacuated soldiers from Gaza to an Israeli occupation military hospital amid intense fighting that left 1 Israeli soldier dead and 3 seriously wounded, reflecting escalating violence in the region. The United Nations will hold a high-level conference on the two-state solution in New York from July 28th to the 30th, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France. Originally scheduled for mid-June, the event was postponed due to the recognition of Palestine as a sovereign state, marking a critical step towards lasting peace. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has opposed Israel's plan to build a so-called humanitarian city in the Palestinian side of Rafah in southern Gaza. He expressed dissatisfaction with Israel's recent actions in Gaza, emphasizing Palestinians' right to a livable homeland. Merz condemned the current situation in Gaza as unacceptable and voiced hope for a two-state solution to the Palestinian cause, advocating cooperation with the U.S. administration to achieve lasting peace. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appeared in a Tel Aviv court to testify in his long-running corruption trial. This marks Netanyahu's first court appearance since the recent military conflict with Iran. He faces multiple corruption charges, including receiving gifts from wealthy associates and allegedly offering regulatory favors to media owners in exchange for positive coverage. Netanyahu denies all allegations and has pleaded not guilty. He has been testifying weekly in the Tel Aviv District Court since his 2019 indictment. The Palestinian death toll in Gaza has risen to over 58,000 since the conflict with Israel began in 2023, according to Gaza's health authorities. In the past 24 hours alone, Israeli military operations killed 139 people and injured 425, including 28 civilians waiting for aid. Israel also launched airstrikes on a market in Gaza City and a water point in Nusayrat refugee camp, killing at least 22, among them children. Since March the 18th, when Israel resumed the major operations, more than 7,400 have been killed. Gaza officials say 105 Palestinians have died while trying to access aid, calling distribution points death traps. And for more analysis, we now move to Hani Saif in our newsroom. Hani.
Thank you, Selma. Ladies and gentlemen, for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the political science professor and a specialist in regional and international security, Dr. Ahmed al-Shahed. Dr. Shahed, welcome to Q News. How does the activation of the Hannibal Protocol reflect the Israeli military strategic priorities in Gaza? How do you read it?
First of all, greetings to you and to the viewers. Naturally, activating the Hannibal Protocol is a very bad indicator that reflects that once Israel adopts this approach, using force to prevent the capturing of any soldier, and to prevent any leak of information and not to have him as pressuring card against Israel. Israel is dealing with this since the very beginning of the war, since October 7th, and they haven't given a lot of attention to the lives of the detainees, but with the internal pressures and the oppositions and protests, they also always want to give the impression that they are keen on the lives of the detainees, but they could have addressed the proposals of detainee exchanges more positively. But what is happening now is completely exceeds a reaction of what happened in October 7th, and it's imposing a new definition of occupation of the Gaza Strip, which is the real goal of the war, regardless of the political objective, which is the bringing back the detainees and or eliminating Hamas, either its leaders or infrastructures. Using this principle or this protocol, Hannibal is now in action, and they are using it systematically. And if they were able to liberate some of the detainees through military solutions, this is the most preferable solution to the Israeli side, because any other way will go against the Israeli doctrine.
Mm-hmm. With the activation of the Hannibal Protocol, should we expect violence to escalate and civilian casualties to rise in densely populated areas like Gaza?
Definitely, violence will increase, and the situation will be worsened, and this will reflect negatively on the death toll or the numbers of the wounded of Palestinians. There will be a lot of new victims without any attention to the humanitarian aspect, and this has been happening for a long time now without the protocol. So now, after the activation of the protocol, we can expect the targeting of all individuals, children or the elderly or women, military or not. The most important thing now is getting rid of or releasing the detainees or neutralizing them for the reasons I've mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Then what should we expect after this incident and the activation of the protocol? how should we expect it to influence the diplomatic efforts or the peace negotiations between the Israeli and the Palestinian authorities?
Of course, this undermines any efforts exerted by the mediators because the principle of negotiation is the exchange of detainees. This is the core of the negotiations. When now the detainees are no longer the main consideration, then the negotiation has no meaning and not influential ceasefire process, and this warns more and further escalation and further violence, and we might even reach a certain extent that we cannot avoid. There will be more ethnic cleansing in the Gaza region to force the population out of it, and this reinforces the idea of the forced displacement or the voluntary, so-called voluntary displacement.
From Cairo, that was Dr. Ahmed al-Shahed, the political science professor and the specialist in regional and international security. Dr. Shahed, thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back, ladies and gentlemen, to Salma in our studio. Salma.
Thank you, Hani. And thousands of Israeli protesters filled the streets of Tel Aviv, urging the government to end the war in Gaza and secure a deal for the release of detainees held by Hamas. Demonstrators called for a ceasefire as negotiations in Doha over a U.S.-backed proposal for a 60-day truce continues to face hurdles. Sources familiar with the talks said key sticking points include the scale of the Israeli troop withdrawal from Gaza. Moving on to Cairo, where the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has safely returned to Egypt after attending the 7th Mid-Year Coordination Summit of the African Union held in Malibu in Equatorial Guinea. His participation underscored Egypt's commitment to the African unity and regional cooperation. The summit provided a platform for advancing continental integration and addressing key issues affecting Africa's peace and development. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has traveled to Brussels to attend the 5th ministerial meeting of the EU foreign ministers and southern neighborhood countries. The meeting focuses on consultations regarding the Mediterranean Charter, an initiative the European Union plans to launch by the end of this year, aiming to strengthen regional cooperation and partnership. And trade between Egypt and the African Union member states has risen to $9.8 billion in 2024, marking a 6.5% increase from 2023. And according to the cap mass, the Egyptian exports to the continent reached $7.7 billion, growing at 4.7%, with Libya, Morocco, and Algeria as top importers. And imports to Egypt also surged a 14.5% to a $2.1 billion, led by the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Sudan. And in Syria, the Syrian Defense Ministry has reported casualties among its forces while trying to halt clashes and protect civilians in El Suwaida villages amid ongoing fights between the local factions and external armed groups. Institutional voids worsened chaos and hindered official security interventions. Coordination with the Interior Ministry, specialized military units were deployed to affected areas to secure safe passages and swiftly end clashes. The ministry urged all parties to cooperate, exercise restraint, and emphasized that restoring security is a shared responsibility, pledging full support for initiatives promoting peace and citizenship. And moving on to Tehran, where Iran has accused the International Atomic Energy Agency of double standards and political bias, criticizing its silence on Germany's nuclear violations involving the U.S. weapons, which breached the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai condemned the snapback sanctions mechanism as legally and morally baseless, exploited unfairly. Iran maintains its nuclear deal membership despite reducing commitments due to the U.S. and European breaches, asserting that European parties failed to uphold their obligations and undermining the deal's legal foundation. U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg has arrived in Kiev following the U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of a new Patriot air defense system shipments to Ukraine. The Ukrainian presidential office chief welcomed Kellogg's visit, endorsing Trump's peace through strength approach. Since the February 2022 conflict outbreak, fighting has persisted over 5 Russian-controlled regions. Despite ongoing hostilities, limited progress includes detainee exchanges and planned negotiations. Ukrainian and American officials continue urging Trump to impose tougher sanctions on Russia amid stalled diplomatic efforts to end the conflict.
And of course, we had very good conversations in Hague, and we had with President.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new plan to arm Ukraine with offensive weapons, including long-range missiles capable of striking deep inside Russia, marking a major policy shift from his previous defensive-only stance. And this move aims to alter the conflict's trajectory and pressure Russia's President Vladimir Putin towards a ceasefire. Frustrated by escalating Russian attacks and Putin's refusal to de-escalate, Trump's decision follows consultations with allies and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. European nations will finance the advanced military equipment, including Patriot missile batteries, as part of this strategic support. And Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has confirmed that the U.S. military aid to Ukraine, including weapons and equipment, continues and will persist despite rising costs, which Europe is expected to bear. Moscow views this support as fueling the conflict and hindering negotiations, while Washington and its allies justify it as defending Ukraine's sovereignty amid escalating economic challenges and debates within Europe over the ongoing assistance. And since the 2022 conflict began, the U.S. has supplied Ukraine with advanced arms, including long-range missiles and air defense systems. A gunman has killed 2 women at a church in Kentucky and wounded a state trooper before being shot dead by the police. And the attack happened at Richmond Road Baptist Church in Lexington, where 2 men were also wounded and 1 critically. Authorities say the suspect later shot at a state trooper near Bluegrass Airport before the police returned fire and killed him. The trooper is in stable condition. Police have not released the suspect's identity and say the motive remains unclear. And Australia has fired a long-range rocket system for the first time, joining the U.S. and Singapore forces in major joint war games. And during the first day of Australia's largest military exercise, Talisman Sabre armoured trucks equipped with HIMARS systems launched rockets in northern Queensland. The U.S., Japan, France, South Korea and Singapore also took part, using the F-35B fighter jets and land-based missiles. The HIMARS, in high demand in Ukraine, are being adopted by the U.S. allies across the Indo-Pacific as they respond to China's military buildup. And 8 people have been injured during the 7th bull run at Spain's San Fermin festival in Pamplona. Emergency services in the Navarra region say 6 of those injured were taken to local hospitals. And bulls from the La Palmosilla ranch charged through Pamplona's narrow streets in just over 2 minutes as hundreds of runners dressed in white with red neckerchiefs sprinted over the 875-meter route. And London is welcoming an immersive Elvis Presley experience summer described as the world's first of its kind. And opening on July the 17th at Immerse LDN Arena, Elvis Evolution takes visitors through retro diners and dressing rooms and iconic stages, including his 1968 TV special. The show blends AI-enhanced performances with live actors and musicians. It also traces Presley's early life in Mississippi, highlighting his close friendship with Sam Bell and his love for gospel music. And organizers hope to reveal lesser-known moments that shaped the king of rock and roll. And Superman fans and their dogs gathered in Los Angeles for a special outdoor screening of the new Superman film, celebrating the hero's furry sidekick, Krypto. Dozens of dog owners packed the open-air theater on Thursday to cheer for Krypto, the superpowered dog first introduced in the 1955 comics. The latest film, directed by James Gunn, features Krypto inspired by Gunn's own rescue dog. Fans say adding a 4-legged hero makes Superman more relatable and fun. Many called for more dog cameos in future films, saying dogs bring joy and connect deeply with audiences.
That's the best.
Okay. All right, sir.
And the original Birkin bag has sold for over $10 million at a Sotheby's auction in Paris, setting a European record for a fashion item. The bag started at €1 million and soared to $8.6 million, or about $10 million, before being sold to a Japanese collector bidding by phone. The iconic bag was designed in 1984 after actress Jane Birkin asked Hermès for a bigger and practical bag. This original model is larger than standard Birkins and features Birkin's initials along with stickers from the UNICEF and Médecins du Monde. Regular Birkin bags already command high prices, but this unique piece is considered a true collector's treasure. And Apple TV's Prehistoric Planet has launched as a 360-degree immersive show in London, bringing dinosaurs to life in full scale. An opening at the Lightroom Art Centre, Prehistoric Planet, Discovering Dinosaurs, blends scenes from the Emmy-nominated series with a new CGI. And visitors can walk among life-size Cretaceous dinosaurs and compare their height to human cutouts and watch interactive hunts and underwater sequences. Producer Mike Gunton says the exhibit lets audiences truly feel the massive scale of creatures like the T-Rex and mosasaurs, calling it the golden age of dinosaur life. And Mattel has unveiled the first ever Barbie doll with type 1 diabetes, aiming to boost awareness and representation for the young people with the condition. Released alongside a one-of-a-kind doll inspired by the British model Leela Moss, the new Barbie comes with insulin patches, a glucose monitor and an insulin pump. Moss, who has type 1 diabetes, posed with her look-like doll in London, celebrating the importance of visibility. Matul worked with diabetes charities to design accurate medical accessories, hoping to empower children and encourage them to embrace their medical devices with confidence. The European Union Climate Commissioner has emphasized China's critical role in tackling climate change, praising its progress in solar and wind energy, while urging more action to phase down coal usage. Speaking ahead of the upcoming climate talks, he highlighted international agreements from the COP Glasgow and the UAE that called for transitioning away from fossil fuels. He stressed that global climate goals cannot be met without strong Chinese leadership, encouraging Beijing to halt new coal plant construction and strengthen its emissions reduction targets in its nationally determined contributions.
Internationally, we have agreed in Glasgow, the COP in Glasgow, to phase down.
And severe flooding swept parts of Catalonia after heavy rainfall the night before, prompting over 200 emergency calls. And footage released by Spain's firefighting service showed submerged roads and plains as red weather alerts were issued Friday night by meteorological agency AMET. And Catalonia's fire department said helicopter search operations were underway as crews responded to widespread storm-related incidents across the region. And thousands flocked to beaches and parks across western Scotland to enjoy the UK's hottest day in 2 years. In Ayr, beachgoers cooled off in the Firth of Clyde as temperatures hit 28 degrees, while Aviemore in the Highlands reached 32 degrees centigrade. And with Glasgow peaking at 29 degrees, tourists and locals sought relief in the city's botanical gardens. The UK Met Office defines a heat wave as temperatures of 25 degrees or higher for 3 consecutive days in the same area. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett has said the U.S. President Donald Trump has reviewed trade deal proposals but insists they must improve. And Hassett said that the 50% tariff threat on Brazilian goods reflects the president's frustration with Brazil's trade conduct in the ongoing negotiations. He emphasized that the tariffs remain a real possibility, but talks continue. Hassett also noted Trump's authority under the International Energy Emergency Economic Powers Act to act on national security grounds, citing the need for domestic copper production for defense purposes as a factor in trade decisions. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 30% tariffs on imports from Mexico and the European Union beginning August the 1st, citing stalled trade talks and security concerns. In letters posted on Truth Social, Trump criticized Mexico's anti-cartel efforts and accused both trading partners of failing to reach fair trade agreements. The EU and Mexico are among the U.S.'s largest trade allies, with Mexico sending over 80% of its exports to the U.S. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here's what we have been covering. Israeli occupation military faces a new disaster amid fierce fighting in eastern Gaza City. The Syrian Defense Ministry reports casualties among its forces while trying to protect civilians in El Suwaida villages. U.S. Special Envoy Kellogg arrives in Kiev following announcement of new air defense system shipments to Ukraine. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. And don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube and Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.